speaking. And it's every Tuesday at 11 a.m. unless there is a House of Assembly meeting. We don't have a special guest today, but we will talk on a number of issues, particularly the state of the economy. Last week we had the leader of the opposition on, and yesterday the premier gave a press release on a number of issues in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And we're going to talk about some of those things that she brought to the front line. And one of those things is obviously our economy is not the same as a result of COVID-19. In the press statement yesterday, the premier said it was only $700,000, was collected this time versus 23.6 million. I think she said 700. That is very alarming, and it's alarming in that the government has such a huge expenditure budget of $306 million. And if it continues on this trend, then what are we to do? We already see an upset in the tourism industry, even though the country is did open on July 22nd. And a lot of us expected beaches to open shortly thereafter. But we see that beaches has made their announcement that they will not open until October 14th. And so that now is another upset in the industry. It's an upset because beaches plays a very integral part in the economy. They are the largest resort on island, and as a result, the scheduling of flights will depend on the booking of flights from beaches. And so this will also change the flight schedule between now and October. I know that I saw where it was mentioned, I think on the premier's page, we had over 1,034 passengers since, and 53 by the private airports, the FBOs, since July 22nd. It looks good. 1,000 looks good. I don't know, the breakdown of that 1,034, whether it's a lot of it's returning residents. I do not know. And this time of the year is also normally a slow time of the year. July, August, September, even though we have guests coming in, but it's not the same as January to April or May. Even May was normally a pretty good month if you look at the previous years. And so we are in a debacle right now on what to do going forward. Not only the government, in the private sector as well. The private sector plays a very integral part of our economy. It is through the private sector that the government is able to get their funding. We have hotels that charge accommodation tax and collects on behalf of the government, and then remit it to the government on the 21st of each month. And we have private individuals and businesses who are importing goods and services, and they pay their duty, and the government collects that. We also have the private sector bringing in individuals to work for them and paying a work permit fee, and that fee is paid to the government. And I believe that work permit fee is almost $20 million for the year. And so you see we have a picture of this impact that our economy has taken. And if we only have collected $700,000, that's a big concern. What are we to do? The government has not indicated whether or not they will borrow any money. I understand, though, that based on when the leader of the opposition was here yesterday, and then we had a previous guest, that we had quite a number of land transactions. And when people purchase land or purchase condos, whatever, you pay the government a stamp duty. And so the government collects that as a percentage of the price you pay for the land or the property. And so that goes into treasury. I understand that has been significant. In fact, it was in the works before the closure of the country on March 24th. But it'd be interesting to see, the breakdown of what we've collected so far. So what are we to do? What are we to do? How do we close this gap? It's going to be very, very difficult to close this gap because the way our industry is, the way our country is set up, the way that we depend on one industry, is going to be very difficult. And so we have to now find ways to be creative. And unfortunately, no matter what we come up with, it will not be able to close the gap overnight. Coming up with something in an industry that's coming up with something new or creative, it will take a while. It will take a while because you got to do a lot of research. You got to do a lot of setting up. There's a lot of red tape. Even setting up businesses in Turks and Caicos, a lot of red tape. It's going to take a while. And so if things do not improve, then we all will be forced to let people go. We'll be forced to lay off individuals. And that is a fact that we have to admit. I don't believe anybody wants to lay off people. But if the country has this big financial gap whereby they're not collecting the money that they were collecting before, businesses are not making the revenue that they were making before. If the revenue is not growing and their expenses are the same, then how can businesses survive? You have to do something. You either try to grow the revenue, and if you want to keep your expenses, that's fine. But if you are unable to grow your revenue, you'll be forced to cut your expenses. Say, example, your revenue was $1 million a year, and your expenses was $800,000. You no longer have that $1 million coming in, but you still have $800,000 in expenses. Where will you get the money from to cover that $800,000 in expenses? How will you get the money? You could get the money through a loan, okay? But is it worth getting a loan to cover that $800,000 when you're not even sure how long you will face this uncertainty? Because the loan is a loan. If you have a loan, you have to pay the money back. And so the other alternative thing to do is to let some of your employees go. You have no choice. Either you do that, or you work out some arrangement with them whereby they work part-time. And so that is a challenge that most people have. And if you let your employees go, if you make them redundant, you have to pay them a redundancy 2 weeks for every year that the employee has been employed. So if someone has worked for you for 5 years, you have to pay them 10 weeks of salary. And if you don't have the money, how do you deal with that? And so we are in a very critical and uncertain stage in businesses. Now, the government continues to pay their civil servants salary. I don't know if all of them are working, but they continue to do that. I don't know how long they'll be able to maintain that payment. But this is something that they will have to review. How do we continue on this path if we're not getting any income coming in? That's basically 1 + 1 is 2. What do we do? We have the reserve. The reserve will be used up soon. The $100 million will be used up soon if it's not done so already, because the government's expenditure is over $25 million a month. They may not spend all of that because certain expenses they may not need to do, such as travel. They would need to travel as much because the country is locked down. But the budget was $306 million, I think, and so that's $25 million a month. And so where do we get the money from? Flights are coming in, but they're coming in very slowly because people are afraid to. Nobody wants to die. That's the bottom line. People are afraid that they'll get COVID-19. They're afraid. And because they're afraid, they will not travel. And then some people really have lost their jobs. And they cannot afford to travel. They cannot afford to take that vacation they plan. And so we need to have an alternative way of survival in the Turks and Caicos Islands. There are not many locals in the country, maybe 10,000, but we have a lot of residents that reside here. Our population is over 35,000 people. And I know a lot of people are pushing the button that we should send people home. I mean, obviously, if you are unemployed and you're on a work permit and you don't have a job, then you should go home. That's a given. But if you're still here on a valid work permit and you're working, that's different. And work permit holders are also contributing to the economy. They are living in someone's apartment. They're going to the grocery stores. They're paying their TV bill, their electricity bill, their water bill. All of that is helping these companies to also survive. Because the water company in Fortis, they cannot survive with just the 10,000 locals. They cannot. And if they want to survive with just the locals, then they will have to increase the rate further in order for them to be sustainable. And if they want, or what they can do, is reduce their payroll costs. And most of these companies that I mentioned, the water company, the electricity company, majority of the employees are Turks and Caicos Islanders, majority. And if they cannot sustain their profitability, then they too will be forced to lay people off. And so you see, this whole thing is so interrelated that even if we take one element out of the equation, it will impact the other. So what do? We do not have a full answer. And that is why I believe it's important for all of us to come together, iron this thing out, produce some ideas on what can make this thing workable. I know the government said they have a think tank and an economic council. I'm not sure who they are. I mean, who are the people on that board? But we didn't have to wait on the government's economic council. A group of us in the private sector, we need to come together, because this what we're going through is a matter of life and death. And when I say death, I don't necessarily mean physical death, financial death. We all need money. We all need money. Whether we want to admit it or not, we need money. All of us need money to survive. I know a lot of people talk about the love of money. The love of money is different. We need money to survive. And the way things are going right now, we don't have any money. We see a lot of people are encouraging their staff to work from home. And if they're encouraging their staff to work from home, that means eventually they'll tell that landlord they don't need to rent from them anymore. And that landlord will be stuck with that mortgage, but with no income coming in. Because people are working at home. COVID-19 has taught us that you can work from home. And if you can work from home, then people will say, well, I work from home from March until July, then this is a rent expense that I don't need. So for the company that's renting, it's a great opportunity for them. But it's a big loss to the landlord. And you cannot blame the company for taking that step. I would have done the same thing personally. But for me, working from home is not the best thing for me. Because when you have, a lot of children in your home, no matter where you go, they'll find you. So to me, it's not easy for me to work from home. But some people, it's easy for them. And so I decided that I'll work from my office that I'm paying rent for. A lot of people will be forced to make a decision to not do because they cannot even afford to pay the rent. And so these are some of the things we need to look at. And then the government, like the private sector, looking for ways to reduce costs. The government also needs to look for ways to reduce costs. If the revenue, based on what the Premier said, the revenues are down 47%. The budget is already was presented in a deficit state. If the revenues are down by 47%, I don't know if it's down compared to the prior year or it's down 47% compared to the budget. I do not know that one. But if it is down, then the government will be forced to reduce its costs. And I know nobody wants to touch payroll costs, especially with elections coming up between now and March. Nobody wants to touch it. But the truth is, that is something we need to review. We need to have a frank conversation with the civil servants. We need to show them this is where we are. Especially those civil servants that are not working but getting paid. If you're working full time, you should get your money. But if you're home and not going to work, that's a different story. Now, if all of you are working, then my apologies. But if you're not working, you should not get a full salary. That's the bottom line. But I don't believe anybody want to touch that. But if you're not working, you don't get a full salary. But if you're getting a full salary, then what the government needs to do is to use those people in other areas. If they're going to continue to pay the civil servants, then use them in another area, especially when it comes to the policing. of ensuring that people are wearing their masks. We need people in business outlets monitoring people. We need them all over the place monitoring people to make sure that they're wearing masks. And maybe we could use some of those civil servants in different establishments monitoring people. And if they're not wearing masks, then they should have the right to find them. We need more of that. Because this virus does not have to spread the way it's spreading. It is spreading the way it's spreading because we're not wearing masks, we're not washing our hands, and we're not practicing social distancing. So we could use some of those persons who are not physically in the office to go to different locations, policing them, then that's a different story. The next item we need to look at throughout is utilities. For the government and for the private sector. I don't know if the government has a special rate with Fortis. I know some hotels, I think their rates are not the same as residential, depending on the volume of consumption. But the rate has increased. You would have received your light bill this week because Fortis took the reading on the 21st of July because the new rate kicks in on the 22nd of July. And Fortis normally do their rate readings, I think, around the 24th, 25th. So to avoid any confusion and to ensure that the right thing is done, given that the rate came into effect on the 22nd, they did the right thing by doing the reading on the 21st because the new rate kicks in on the 22nd. So that bill you get may be a little bit lower than the previous month. It's because it's only like 23 days because they took the reading on the 21st. It may be only 21 days, depending on when they read the meter, the last bill you got. So that is not the full bill compared to the previous month because they took the reading early. And so some of you may be rejoicing you got a lower bill. It may not be so. You may have a lower bill, but the number of days the bill represents is not the same. But to come next month, in August, when you get your new bill, if your consumption level remains the same, your bill will go up. And so you need to be careful how you are using the electricity because your bill has gone up. I don't know about the fuel factor, but your bill would have gone up by 6.8%. I don't know how government's offices work. I don't know if we are monitoring, making sure, the ACs are turned off at the end of each day. I do not know if they have someone responsible for that. You at home, you shouldn't be burning your AC all night and all day. Kids will want that, but they don't understand. Especially for you who are not getting any salary. I know it's hot, but these are some of the things you need to look at. Utility is a big consumption of your expenditure. This is something you need to review. This is something the government needs to review. The rate is already there. I know a lot of us complaining that Ford has increased the rate, but it's already happened. They're not going to go back and go back. They already have implemented the rate. It's up to us now to change the way we utilize electricity. The next thing is a big element of water. A lot of us have city water, and we still buy a lot of the water We have, the water that we have is coming in our city water is coming from Provo Water and Providenciales. I'm not sure about Grand Turk and South Caicos. But even though we're getting this water from Provo Water Company, we still every week go and buy water when it's perhaps the same water. We still have government facilities spending a lot of money on water. It adds up, It adds up. And how do we know that people aren't even taking the water home from your business and from the government's offices? We need to cut that out. They can bring their own water. That adds up. Or use the water from the tap. It's the same water. Just make sure get a filter for the tap. The water company, Provo Water Company, doing reverse osmosis. The other water company, they are also doing reverse osmosis. The only thing is, they're putting it in a bottle, and yours is coming from the tap, which they are flowing through the pipes for the city water. It adds up. To travel, we don't need to be traveling among the islands. We don't need to be no longer physically. If you have a meeting coming up, you don't need to be physically in that meeting. With all of this virtual and Zooming that we did over COVID-19, we should continue it, especially government. I mean, the loss will be for the airlines because, they have the employees and, they depend on the travel income to pay their employees. But the traveling that we do can be cut down. And that's what government can do. Cut down on the traveling. Maybe they're doing that already. And continue to use Zoom or whatever whatever facility they're using, and make sure you record whatever you're doing, so you can have it as proof of your meetings. You could always go back to the meetings. But these are some of the things that the government will have to look at, since revenue has gone down by 47%. But the expenditure, there's nothing being said about the expenditure. And then the government, my understanding is that there'll be another stimulus package. So they need money for that. I do not know how much it will be, but they need money for that. I think already 7.1 was paid out. There's a budget of 25, and I believe the 25 perhaps was the budget for the first stimulus package. And so we can have a cash flow issue if we do not cut back on some of our costs. I admire all those persons who are doing their backyard gardens. The government has taken notice of that. I encourage you to continue to do so. It's a hobby now for some people. You're growing your own thing. And that can save you a lot of money as well. In fact, we have to be very careful what we eat anyway. I see even that one of the nurseries are selling chickens. You could grow your chicken in your backyard because you don't know what the chicken you're eating anyway. And so these are some of the simple things that you could do, and it adds up, you know. It adds up. And the great news is the government has announced that they will have funding to support farmers. And so you should take advantage of that. We all should be farmers. Or what we can do is we can work together as a community, which I mentioned before. I do the mangoes. You do the sour lime. I love lime, by the way. I drink lime every day now. And you do the avocados, whatever you grow. You could probably just focus on one thing, and it could be a community thing. Of course, some of us might not want that. We might want to do everything for ourselves. But it's just a thought. And I think that's something that we should even consider, actually, because it will bring us together as a community. We're so divided. And we could come together as a community by growing different crops and sharing it among each other. That will bring us together. That's one way it will bring us together. And I think that we should give that a try. Let us try that. The offshore finance is another area that has been looked into. I don't know what is taking it, so why it's taking so long to reach a point where the offshore finance could be like a major player in our industry. I believe we need a full-time team, different from the Financial Services Commission, because the Financial Services Commission is the regulatory body. Somehow they're not promoting offshore finance. That's not their job, apparently. Their job is to regulate the industry. So I believe, I know they have appointed a board back in 2016 to review the offshore finance and to see how we could launch it as a major means of our GDP. But I believe in order for this to work, we need a full-time team dedicated in growing the offshore finance. We don't need just a board. We need a full-time paying team. I don't know what we call it, but we need a department just dealing with growing offshore finance. BVI, the Cayman Islands, and Bermuda. I don't know what went wrong with Turks and Caicos. I don't know where we went wrong. But these three islands are doing well despite COVID-19. And BVI, their GDP on offshore is more than 55%. Bermuda is almost the same thing. In fact, tourism in Bermuda is like less than 10%. Cayman Islands is a significant part of their GDP is on offshore. But Turks and Caicos is less than 5%. Where did we go wrong? And I believe we have an opportunity to grow. This is one industry that I believe we could grow. And it could grow overnight. I know I said at the beginning of the show, you know, we need something big, it might take a while. But the offshore finance, if we could find a niche and run with it, it will help us greatly. Can you imagine in BVI where there's over 500,000 companies registered? And I don't know, we probably only got about 30,000 probably. They have developed a niche Cayman Islands has developed. Bermuda has. All we're doing is just talking and talking and talking. If we could put our action to our talks, there's no reason why the Turks and Caicos Islands should not be there. We're the best thing in the Caribbean. So if we bring offshore here, then why not? But in order for it to work, we need a dedicated team, and we need money to market the Turks and Caicos Islands for offshore. Yes, tourism will always perhaps be our number one industry. But as we see what happened to us in the past with recessions, what's happening to us now with COVID-19, we cannot rely totally on tourism. And everybody knows that now. We cannot rely on tourism totally. Everybody knows that. So what are we to do? Yes, we talk about agriculture, but agriculture will not bring a big thing into the economy. It will not. It will help us, but it will not boost the economy that we need to maintain our standard of living. It will not bring that money that we need to pay our bills, especially if everybody's doing their own thing. What we need is something like Bermuda, BVI, and Cayman. We see all those issues going on in Hong Kong right now, where China has completely taken over officially. And BVI and Hong Kong somehow seem to have a relationship. That is something we need to tap into. We need to be in Hong Kong, inviting businesses to be here. We may perhaps need to set up a full-time person in Hong Kong. That's just an idea. And see what we could do. Maybe the think tank or the economic council will come in, I do not know. But these are some of the things we need to look at. Now, interestingly, Barbados and Bermuda are now offering this 12-month program whereby they're encouraging people, to come to Barbados and work from Barbados. Since you're working remotely, wouldn't it be nice to work remotely in a Caribbean island? And that's what they're encouraging. I don't know how the program will work, but I like the idea. All of these companies say that they are allowing their staff to work remotely. They'll work remotely from the Caribbean. And maybe that's something we should do. But there's so much red tape around here. There's so much red tape. There's a lot of red tape getting a business license. You gotta wait forever. There's red tape getting work permits. And I don't know how this will work since we're telling people to go back home. I don't know how this will work when Barbados and Bermuda are encouraging people to come to their country and work from there. How will it work for us? Will a Turks and Caicos Island have to apply for that job? How will that work? If we're inviting businesses to allow their individuals or their companies to work remotely in these Caribbean islands, but our immigration law say you must advertise, you must ensure that a Turks and Caicos Island can do the job. How will that work if we do that though? These are some of the things we need to consider. But I like the concept. Like it or not, we need more people into the country. We need more consumers. We need more people buying our products and services. We need more people to grocery stores. We need more people to the fuel. We need more apartments to be rented. And only way we get these things rented if we have people in the country, staying here, residing here. And so one way we could do is to allow people to work here remotely. Make it an exception. Ain't nothing wrong with copying another country's policy. Barbados came out with it first. And then a few weeks later, Bermuda said, hey, wait a minute, I'll do the same thing. And Bermuda is okay, because they're doing well with offshore. But they still have a gap. And if I tell you this, people are working remotely now for some major companies in this country. Believe it or not, some work permits were turned down. And these companies did not replace them with a local or anybody. They love these individuals so much. They feel that they can get so much value from these individuals. So what they did with these individuals is that these individuals are working for them from their home country. Now that's different from what Barbados is proposing. But I'm just saying, sometimes we rejoice when we see these things happening. But some companies have recruited those same individuals whose work permits we turned down, and they're allowing them to work for them remotely. And there's nothing wrong. They're not violating the country's law. They don't need a work permit if they are working from their home country. If you turn my work permit down, I'm in the Philippines or India, and I can work for you. They will do it. In fact, it may be less burden on the employer because they don't have to pay the work permit fee, and they don't have to pay housing, and that family is with their family. My time almost up. And so sometimes we have to be very careful how we go about making decisions. I've always felt and always believed that every Turks and Caicos Islander should be employed. They should always be priority. We should never overlook a Turks and Caicos Islander for a job. But if we cannot find someone for the job, then there's nothing wrong with getting a work permit for someone. A Turks and Caicos Islander cannot be on every job. There are over 23,000 jobs in the country. Well, prior to COVID-19. There were over 23,000 jobs in the country based on the job skills audit. That's 2017, so I'm quite sure it's more than that. And there were only like about 8,000 to 9,000 Turks and Caicos Islanders in the workforce. So we cannot all be on the job. I cannot be on two jobs at the same time. And so that is why we have to make sure, the first thing we have to make sure is that every Turks and Caicos Islander is employed. And so those who are unemployed need to register with the Labor Department. And once all Turks and Caicos Islanders are employed, then we should have a proper issue work permits. That should be our strategy. And we should not put somebody on a job if we know that they are not qualified for the job either, because they are Turks and Caicos Islander. Because you're setting that person up for failure. What we should do with that, if someone is not ready, what we should do is ensure that they understudy the person that you have, hopefully that they will get that job. If you have a financial controller, and don't just put someone who just got a degree in accounting with no experience as the financial controller. They will fail. They have no experience. They just have a degree. Make them the deputy financial controller. Allow them to get that experience understudying the person with the experience, so that in 2 or 3 years they could get that job as financial controller. Don't allow people to fail. And people fail because they're in the wrong positions. They're not qualified for it. We put them there because we say they are entitled to it. And yes, they are. But they should not go on a job not knowing what to do. They will fail. They will lose their confidence, and they will think that they are not capable because when they realize they cannot do the job. Training is important. Experience is important. And that is why I believe that anyone that completes a degree, whether United Kingdom or United States, I believe you should try and get some experience. You don't have to rush, come home. Please come home though. But get at least, 2 to 3 years experience wherever you are, in the United Kingdom or United States. Because there's so much you have to learn on the job. A lot of us come home with a degree and we think we know everything. And we apply for the jobs. We get the jobs because we're locals, and we cannot do the job. That's not what we want. We want successful stories about Turks and Caicos Islands. We want successful stories about everybody. And this is something we have to learn to grip with. And we can do it. We can do it. It's just a matter of time, It is just a matter of time. You may be looking at that salary, that is being advertised, and so you are rushing for the job because you see the salary, and you might be upset because someone else, got the job over you. Look at the experience. I mean, even if you don't have a degree, there are a lot of courses online that you could take to upgrade your skills. You could do it. This economy, no matter how things look, this economy will pick up again. And during this slow time, now is the time for us to be creative. Now is the time for us to study. Now is the time for us to do our research. Now is the time for us to become knowledgeable. So when things pick up, we will be in full gear to embrace the opportunities that take place. The opportunities are coming. I know a lot of us are upset about the beaches October 14th day. That's okay. It's fine. October 14th is right around the corner, The end of July is in a few days. Then we have August. Then we have September. Then we have October. 2.5 months. That's not bad. We've been locked down for more than that. But during this time, we need to be patient. We need to be creative. And I believe that a lot of us are doing it. and we will see good results. A lot of us are talking about coming together, opening businesses together. Now that'll be a good thing. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that happen this year, because we've been talking about that for a long time. We don't trust each other. Some of us don't have any money. But you may have some assets that you could bring to the drawing table. I'm tired of people talking about coming together. I'm tired of this thing about united. You can hear a lot of that now during election time. Let's be united. Let's come together for real. Open up our businesses, but just stay out of it. Don't get involved in the day-to-day activity of it. Establish a board. Have your board meet once a month or twice a month, whatever, and hire a CEO who's not a shareholder and run the company for you that you have established with other local partners. I think that's an ingredient to success. It doesn't make sense, I open up chicken and fries. Mary Jo open up chicken and fries. John Doe open up chicken and fries. We're serving the same 35,000 people. Wouldn't it be better if we open up one big chicken and fries and have different outlets? One in Grace Bay, one in Blue Hills, one in Five Keys, one downtown. The same company owned by 5 of us or 10 of us. Because when you have all these little moms and pops, everybody trying to make $1. And so what they will do, they will reduce their price. I'll give you 2 chicken wings for $1. Oh no, I'll give you 2 chicken wings and a soda for $1. Come over here. So these are some of the things we need to look at too. Even the gas stations that have opened up, we have so many. That's fine, that's great. But why can't we come together, some of us, and open up these gas stations together with different locations? Because all we're doing right now is this 1 cent. I see one of them had gas for, say, $4.88. The person next door changed them to $4.87. Come on, we could come together and we could still have that $4.88. And guess what? You'll make more profit. You can share it. You wouldn't have to reduce the price. But if you come together, your profits will increase, and you can share it out as dividends. I know everybody wants things on their own, and I know that. I know there's lack of trust. I know. We gotta trust somebody sometime. We gotta continue on this path. Do you think IJ is owned by one person? Do you think the hotel projects are owned by one person? It's a number of developers, and then they sell the condos. But we want to own everything by ourselves. That's not how we should operate, especially in these small islands. We should set an example of how we could conduct businesses in this place. And because we are thinking so much about ourselves, we tend to spread rumors about other businesses. We try to bring other people's businesses down. We try to say all the bad stuff about people's businesses because you don't want them to come to them. You want them to come to you. You have now become very toxic in competing against the peers in the industry. That's not what we ought to be doing. Competition shouldn't drive you to become toxic and mean. It should allow you to become better. And when we open our businesses, we got to think beyond Turks and Caicos Islands, That's why I admire. I don't care what nobody say when Mr. Lyndon Gardner. I admire the man. I really admire him. He has taken his industry outside of Turks and Caicos Islands. But yet a lot of us go on Facebook and we talk so bad about this man business. Why do we do that? Why don't we contact Inter-Caribbean directly and say, Inter-Caribbean, I have an issue. And if they don't satisfy you, then maybe you could take it on social media, but you shouldn't anyway. Contact them first before you blast people on social media. Sometimes the issues you have, they might not even be aware of it. But we feel satisfied by going on social media, attacking our very own. That's not how we need to operate. I don't think you should attack anybody on Facebook. I mean, personally, I don't think you should attack anybody on social media. That's my personal opinion. I don't think you should attack any individual, and I don't think you should attack businesses. I think there's a way to reach businesses. They have a telephone number. They have a website. A lot of them do. Reach out to them. Because one day you'll have your own business. And it will come back to haunt you the same way you did. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Sometimes we get so emotional. We feel hype up. We feel good when we do the worst for people and businesses. We feel we've accomplished something, but we have not accomplished something. In fact, it says a lot about you as a person. I will end on that note. But I encourage all of you to never give up, despite how things look. I encourage all of you to be patient and to have faith and belief that things are going to get better. I personally believe so, no matter how it looks. Thank you so much for tuning in on Financially Speaking. I'm not sure we'll have a show next week because I believe there is a House of Assembly meeting, I understand, on August 4th, which is a Tuesday. So I'm not sure. I believe there is a House of Assembly meeting. If there's a House of Assembly meeting next Tuesday, there'll be no Facebook. There'll be no show. However, I encourage all of you tonight at 6 p.m. to tune in on a one-to-one with our Premier, the Honorable Charlene Cartwright Robertson, right here on this station. A one-to-one conversation as a follow-up to the press conference that took place yesterday. Have a wonderful day, and you'll see me again at 6 p.m. on this same station. Thank you very much.